So we can use the zero product property to solve quadratic equations. We can essentially use it to solve for x. When we solve for x, so the solutions to our quadratic equations, we call these solutions for x multiple things. We can call them roots of the equations. We can call them x-intercepts because they are x-intercepts. And they're also called zeros because they're when y equals 0. If the quadratic can be factored, we can use the zero product property. So the zero product property is telling us that if we have a product of two expressions and we know that that product is 0, then one or both of the expressions equals 0. So the algebra statement there is a little confusing. It says if a and b are expressions and a, b equals 0, then a equals 0 or b equals 0. So if you had this equation, x plus 5 times x plus 2 equals 0, well, your two factors are x plus 5 and x plus 2. So you can almost set two little like mini equations, x plus 5 equals 0 and x plus 2 equals 0, and actually solve for those equations. So the first one, you would subtract 5, and x would be positive 5. For the second equation, you would subtract 2, and that would be negative 5. And x would be negative 2, which is what this is saying right here. Because you guys know that anything times 0 is going to be 0. So if you had 3 times 0, it would have to equal 0. That factor of 0 is 0. So it's just that now, because we have variables, we can solve for the individual factors. So when we're doing this, the first key is going to be factoring the expression, and then once we factor the expression, you just solve. So the only thing you guys have to remember is that your equation has to be in standard form and equal to 0 for you to actually be able to use the zero product property. So I'm going to do 3 and 4 with you. For number 3, it says, what are the roots? So remember, the word roots just really means solutions of the equation x squared minus 5x minus 36 equals 0. So you guys could do your diamond and try to think, okay, what multiplies to get you negative 36, but adds to get us negative 5? Well, that would be 9 and 4. The 9 would have to be negative. So the factored form of this equation is x minus 9 and x plus 4 equals 0. So once you guys have it in factored form, you can say, okay, well then x minus 9 must equal 0, and or x plus 4 must equal 0. And then you guys would just solve those little mini equations. So we'll add 9, subtract 4, subtract 4. So your solutions or your roots to this equation would be positive 9 and negative 4. So that would be C. So how about number 4? Solve the equation x squared minus x equals 42. So in this equation, our equation isn't equal to 0. So in order for it to be equal to 0 right now, it's equal to 42, we have to subtract it. So we're going to subtract it to both sides. It's just that on the left, there's nothing to subtract it from. So we're just going to make it minus 42 on the left, and the right will now be 0. So we want to factor. What multiplies to get you negative 42? and adds to get us -1. So -6 or -7 and +6. So the factored form, x minus 7, x plus 6 equals 0. Set both of those factors equal to 0. And then solve. So you would add 7 for that first equation and get x equals 7. Subtract 6 and get x equals -6. So quadratic equations have two solutions.